In the previous videos, we explored the growing energy demands of artificial intelligence. We examined the power bottleneck facing AI, the energy system required to support future growth, and the major companies operating across that ecosystem. Today, we'll focus on one specific segment of that story: nuclear energy. But rather than discussing the technology itself, we'll examine 5 different companies operating across the nuclear value chain and look at where they currently stand from a technical perspective. Before we begin, it's important to remember that many companies in the advanced nuclear sector remain highly volatile. Their future performance depends not only on company execution, but also on broader market conditions, regulation, financing, and the pace of nuclear adoption itself. For that reason, this analysis focuses on long-term market structure, key support and resistance levels, and risk management, rather than short-term trading signals. Let's begin with Constellation Energy. Unlike many of the newer nuclear companies attracting attention today, Constellation already operates at scale. The company owns the largest fleet of nuclear power plants in the United States and is one of the most direct ways to gain exposure to growing electricity demand. Now let's turn to the chart. Looking at the weekly chart, Constellation broke above the major resistance zone around $230 in September 2024. Aside from the tariff-driven market correction during March and April 2025, the stock has managed to remain above that level ever since. Following the breakout, shares climbed roughly 75%, reaching a peak near $412 in October 2025. Since then, the stock has corrected nearly 40% and returned to the $240 area. From a technical perspective, the most important zone on the chart sits between $222 and $232. This area has acted as support multiple times in the past and now represents a key level for risk management. As long as support holds, investors can argue that the longer-term structure remains intact. However, broader market corrections or company-specific developments can always push a stock below technical support. If this zone fails, the next major area of historical demand appears closer to $155 per share. For now, the $222 to $232 region remains the key level to watch. Let's move to Oklo. Unlike Constellation Energy, which already operates nuclear power plants today, Oklo is focused on the future of nuclear energy. The company is developing advanced micro-reactors designed to provide reliable, carbon-free power for industrial facilities, military sites, and potentially future AI infrastructure. However, investors should remember that Oklo is still an early-stage company. It does not yet generate meaningful operating revenue or profits, making it a highly speculative risk-on stock. Now let's turn to the chart. Looking at the weekly chart, Oklo broke above the $55 level in early June 2025. That breakout led to a powerful rally, with the stock gaining roughly 250% and reaching a peak near $184 in October 2025. Since then, shares have corrected sharply, falling nearly 80% back toward the $45 area. This decline highlights the highly volatile nature of the stock. From a technical perspective, the $45 to $55 region is now the most important area on the chart. This was the original breakout zone, and may now act as a major support level. As long as this area holds, investors can argue that the longer-term structure remains intact. However, if support fails, the technical picture changes significantly, with the next major historical support area appearing closer to $20 per share. For now, the $45 to $55 region remains the key level to watch. Let's move to NuScale Power. Unlike Constellation, which operates nuclear power plants today, and unlike Oklo, which plans to own and operate its future reactors, NuScale focuses primarily on reactor design and technology. The company is developing small modular reactors, or SMRs, and holds one of the strongest competitive advantages in the industry. NuScale was the first company to receive U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission approval for an SMR design, giving it a significant first-mover advantage in the advanced nuclear space. Like many companies in this sector, NuScale remains an early-stage business, commercial deployment is still limited. Revenues remain relatively small, and future success depends on broader adoption of SMR technology. Now, let's turn to the chart. Looking at the weekly chart, NuScale broke above the $7 level in May 2024 and has remained above that level ever since. That breakout led to an extraordinary rally, with the stock climbing roughly 740% to a peak near $57 per share in October 2025. Since then, shares have corrected sharply, falling approximately 85% and returning to the $9 area. This highlights the highly volatile nature of advanced nuclear stocks. From a technical perspective, the $7 level remains the most important support zone on the chart. As long as this area holds, investors can argue that the longer-term structure remains intact despite the severe correction. However, if support fails, the technical picture would weaken considerably. Let's move to NANO nuclear energy. Like Oklo and NuScale, NANO nuclear is part of the next generation of advanced nuclear companies. The company is developing portable microreactors designed for industrial facilities, military applications, remote locations, and potentially future AI infrastructure. Like many companies in this sector, NANO nuclear remains an early-stage business. It does not yet generate meaningful operating revenue, making it a highly speculative risk-on stock whose future depends on successful development, regulatory progress, and market adoption. Now let's turn to the chart. Looking at the weekly chart, NANO nuclear broke above the $18 to $19 region in November 2024. That breakout led to a strong rally, with the stock gaining roughly 210% and reaching a peak near $61 per share in October 2025. Since then, shares have corrected sharply, falling nearly 70% and returning to the original breakout area around $19. From a technical perspective, this is now the most important zone on the chart. The $18 to $19 region has once again emerged as a major support area and provides a relatively clear level for risk management. As long as support holds, investors can argue that the longer-term structure remains intact. However, if this zone fails, the technical picture would weaken considerably, with the next major support area appearing closer to $7 per share. For now, the $18 to $19 region remains the key level to watch. Let's finish with Cameco. Unlike several of the companies we've discussed so far, Cameco is not a reactor developer or an advanced nuclear startup. Instead, Cameco is one of the world's leading uranium producers and plays a critical role in supplying fuel to the nuclear industry. For investors looking at the nuclear theme, Cameco offers a different type of exposure. Rather than betting on future reactor designs, the company benefits from growing demand for uranium and nuclear fuel across the industry. Now, let's turn to the chart. Looking at the weekly chart, Cameco broke above the $80 level in September 2025. That breakout led to a strong advance, with the stock gaining roughly 70% and reaching a peak near $135 per share in January 2026. Since then, shares have entered a correction phase, declining approximately 30% and returning to the $94 area. From a technical perspective, the $80 level remains the most important support zone on the chart. Ideally, investors would like to see the stock move closer to that area, as it would provide a much clearer opportunity for risk management and a more attractive risk-to-reward profile. As long as the $80 support level remains intact, the longer-term structure can still be viewed as constructive. However, if broader market weakness or continued selling pressure pushes the stock decisively below $79, the technical picture would deteriorate significantly. In that scenario, the next major support zones could emerge closer to $60 and potentially even $40 per share. As we've seen throughout this analysis, not all nuclear stocks are the same. Constellation Energy represents established nuclear generation. Oklo, NuScale, and NANO. Nuclear represent the next generation of advanced nuclear technologies, and Cameco provides exposure to the fuel that powers the entire industry. If you'd like to explore more market themes, industry trends, and stock opportunities, be sure to subscribe to NAVIXA for for more structured market insights.